Miss Turner. I am a U.S. government teacher at Powell High School. Today, I'm going to walk you through task 3 of your KCS Summer at Home Learning. So that should be the executive branch under U.S. government. If you don't have that assignment sheet pulled up, go ahead and do that right now because you're going to need it. And then I'll tell you everything else you're going to need here in just a second. If the video is hard to understand, you can turn on closed captionings if that function is available on the video that you're watching. You can also adjust the playback, so you can slow down my speech if I'm going too fast for you. You can also watch the video as many times as you want. You can pause it, you can listen, you can watch it again. And then you can also get someone who lives in your house with you to come watch the videos so that you can discuss the content or better explain it to one another. Okay. All right, the things you're going to need. You're going to need your assignment sheet that I mentioned earlier that has all the links on it that we're going to go through today. So you need to access that. You're also going to need a piece of notebook paper or maybe 2, depending on how big your handwriting is. And then you're going to need to print out the all in a day's work matching activity on your assignment sheet. That is step 2. If you can't print it out, it's not a big deal. I will show you an alternative to that here in just a minute, okay, when we get to the task. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is just preview the lesson. Go through, look at it. You can go ahead and click on the links, make sure they work. As you're going through, make sure you don't need to download anything additional. You shouldn't need to, but just make sure that they work on your computer. And then kind of you can read through the tasks, and all of this right here is just, these are standards that we're going to cover. So this has really nothing to do with actually completing a task. It's just for you to see the topics we're going to cover today. Okay. All right. So step 1 is you are going to click right here on your assignment tasks. And this is going to take us to an article. Okay. So an article like this should pop up that you can actually scroll through. And as you read through the article on your piece of paper, I want you to take notes on the powers of the president, the powers of the vice president, the term and length of the presidential term, okay, so how long they can serve, and then how many terms they can serve, and then what should happen if the president died. So let's look at this article really quickly, and then we'll come back into our slides. So you should be able to scroll through this, okay, and it's kind of chunked in the way that I just mentioned. There we go. Okay, so all the presidential powers are going to be right here, okay, on this page. So you're going to make a list of that. And I'll show you how I set my notes up here in just a second. Then here is the vice presidential powers. Here is term lengths and limits. And then down here is what should happen if the president should die, okay? So you're going to take notes on all of these things. And I'm going to show you how I set my notes up. You are more than welcome to set your notes up any way that you want. But sometimes I know we all need a little guidance. So this is how I set my notes up for the reading. Okay, so I labeled it reading notes, and I wrote out there are 11 powers of the president. So I numbered 1 through 11. And then down here, I did a little part on like what the president can do to bills. So, and then the jobs of the vice president, the term length and limit. And then right here, what happens if the president should die. So you can set your notes up this way. Again, you don't have to. You can do it however you want. If you printed it out and you want to highlight these things instead of writing them down, that's fine too, okay? You can do what's best for you in this situation. So you are going to read through this. So you can pause the video right now and read through the article and pick out these particular items, okay? So when you're done with that, come back in the video, push play, and we're going to get started again, okay? All right, welcome back. So you should have a good list of notes now about the president, about his jobs, and what he does in that office, and then how long he can serve, okay? So we're going to move on to step 2. Step 2 is right here. So you're going to click right here where it says complete these activities. And we're going to look at these activities here in just 1 second. Okay, when you click on that, this particular worksheet should pop up. This is what you should have printed out. Okay, if you don't have it printed out, it's perfectly fine. Here's what you can do. On your notebook paper, you can label all these different parts and you can just answer it on your notebook paper. I've done that here. Okay, so I just did it on the back side of my notes, or you can do it on a separate piece of notebook paper. So I labeled A, I've got the power, because that's the name of the section. And there's 14 problems. So I numbered 1 through 14. It's matching, so I don't need a lot of room to write down my answers. Then I did B, so many laws, so little time. And I numbered 1 through 8 because there are 8 problems. Then on part C, I put crossword because it's a little miniature crossword puzzle. And I numbered 1 through 6. Okay, so if you can't print the worksheet out, you're fine. Okay, you just need to do this as opposed to printing out the worksheet. Okay, so going back in here, you're going to use your notes to complete this. You might have to go back and reference your reading for it because there's a couple of things in there that might not necessarily lead you directly to the answers, but that's okay. It's always good to be able to go back and reference a reading. All right, and I'm going to pull this worksheet up so you guys can see it in its entirety. So in part A, what you're going to do is you are going to read a task the president completed, okay? So right here, it says that he leads weekly meetings where I ask leaders of the executive branch departments for advice on how to handle the country's most difficult problems. Then over here, you're going to look at these powers that you just wrote down, okay? You just summarized these. And you're just going to tell me, when the president does this task, which constitutional duty is he fulfilling when he does that task? Okay. And then you have a little part on the vice president right down here as well. Okay. So you're going to go through and match those up. So you need to look at your powers of the president and your powers of the vice president when you do that. This part right here isn't as explicitly in your reading, but you should be able to figure it out based off the description of the department. Okay, so when the president signs a bill into law, he then has to turn around and enforce that law. And so he has a ton of departments right here that can help him do that. Okay, so what you're going to do is read the function of the department, and then using the picture and the description, you're going to try to match them up. Okay, you're going to tell me what department matches with that function. Okay. You guys can do it. So right here it says works to protect the country against terrorism and make sure borders are safe. That tells me that they're trying to protect my home, which makes me think Homeland Security would go in that particular box. Okay, so you're just using the pictures and the descriptions to try to figure out the functions. Okay, all right, and then this last little part down here, you might have to reference your reading for this. Some of this you guys may already know, and that is so great. But it's just a little crossword puzzle. So if you don't know how to do a crossword puzzle, right here where it says across, that's going to fill in all of these blanks that go horizontally, okay, or go sideways. Down are the ones that go up and down. So you want to go up and down, okay, on it for down. And then they have numbers. So like right here, it says 1 across, name of the current president. And you're just going to put his last name there. And then you're going to fill that in here, okay? And that's the same way with the down, is you're just going to fill in those vocabulary terms. If you have a hard time spelling, I have a hard time spelling, reference your notes, okay? Reference the reading, because in crossword puzzles, spelling is very important, okay? So make sure that you are going back and forth and checking that you're spelling words correctly, okay? So what I'm gonna let you do right now is you are going to pause the video again, okay? And then you're gonna fill out your worksheet. And then we'll come back together and talk about it, okay? So take a couple minutes, pause the video, fill out your worksheet. All right, welcome back. So here's the key for the worksheet that you just filled out. So you can pause the video and check your answers. I'm going to talk through a couple of them, and then you can pause it after I talk, or you can pause it before I talk, whichever one you want to do. So you have your answers over here, and then you have your responsibilities here, okay? So you can go through and look at these different things. So we talked about leading weekly meetings, or he's asking people for advice. And so right here, it's just saying that he can ask people their opinions on certain legislations and policies, because the president is just one person, okay? He doesn't know everything. And so he has to surround himself with experts in other fields in order to have a more robust understanding of issues. Okay. Then talking about going to Congress to give his yearly State of the Union speech. So that one was pretty easy. Updates Congress on how things are going in the country. He can decide on whether he wants to sign a bill into law. That's directly in the Constitution, so that's down here at M. And then he has to follow the Constitution, even if he doesn't necessarily agree with the way it's being interpreted or what it's being said, because that is on the day he's inaugurated, he takes that promise, right, to uphold the Constitution. He is the commander-in-chief, so right here, number 5, so deciding whether he wants to send troops into the military or not, so that's over here with C. He has the power to enforce law. So once a law is passed, it becomes the president's job to actually make sure the law is carried out. And so when he does that, he can refer it to like the Department of Homeland Security that we just talked about, and to make sure like that new airport laws are carried out. He can hold a press conference. And so this is just where he can make recommendations to Congress about bills that he wants passed. He can't introduce bills into Congress, but he can put pressure on Congress to actually pass those bills. He, right here, number 8, he can pardon people. So he can let prisoners out of federal prison if he thinks that they have served their sentence or if they've had good conduct or something like that, and that's the pardon power right here. He can negotiate agreements with other countries, and then the Senate confirms or ratifies those agreements. But right here, that's his job, is to make treaties with other countries with a Senate approval. And then he can actually appoint empty Supreme Court justice seats, again, with the approval of the Senate. So you guys can see right here that he gets to choose new Supreme Court justices. The vice president doesn't have very many jobs, but the ones he does have is important. So right here, number 11, if the president dies, resigns, or maybe just gets really sick, the vice president would step up to do that job. So that's right here. He is also the president of the Senate. Okay, that's in the Constitution. So he acts as leader of the Senate. And then in his role, he casts a tiebreaker because the Senate has 100 people. And when you have an even number, there is a chance for a tie break or for a tie. And so the vice president comes in to break those ties. And then he helps helps the president run the executive branch. So right here, they're elected together. That's his job, to help the president fulfill kind of what his vision for the presidency is. Okay. So if you need to pause it, check your answers, do that right now, and then I'll meet you on the next slide. Okay, so here's your other part of the worksheet that you guys can look through. So again, you can pause it, check your answers. So go through and just read about these different departments and what they do, okay? And then down here, you have your crossword puzzles. So most of this stuff, like I said before, you guys would know in terms of like the name and even what party the president belongs to, maybe. And that's great. But here you go. You guys can check these answers as well. Okay, so you can go ahead and pause, check your answers. If you need to rewind the video and go back and check your other answers, that's totally fine. And then once you've done that, resume the video, and then we're going to do our second to last step. Okay. All right. Welcome back. Hope you did well on your worksheet. So step 3 is we're going to play a game. It's called Executive Command, and you're going to be the president. This game has lots of different layers and lots of different jobs. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the game, show you how to get to the game, let you play it, and then we'll come back together. Okay, so once you open the game, you're going to select your difficulty level. So you can do normal, or you can go through it fast, whichever one you want to do. Then you're going to pick your presidential avatar. So you can pick one that looks like you, or if you want to be different, you can do that as well. Then you're going to watch a news coverage, and these are going to kind of pop up throughout the game, but it just kind of tells you what's going on in the world, what are people thinking about it, all of that kind of stuff. You're then going to have a chief of staff, and she's going to help you through the game, okay? So it's kind of her job to keep you on track. You then have to choose your agenda. So what an agenda is in terms of politics is you're going to pick some issues that are important to you as president. And then your job throughout this game is to push your agenda. Okay, you want to get laws passed that benefit your agenda. So you're going to do that. Then you're going to check your mail. And we'll talk more about mail in just a little bit. But during this part, you're going to get bills that need to be signed or vetoed. You're going to get diplomacy requests. You're going to get military requests. And you have to decide what to do with those requests. Okay. All right. You also are going to be able to explore the Capitol. So that's over here. So that would be Washington, D.C. for our purposes. But in this Capitol, you have all your federal agencies that we just talked about, are those departments. So you're going to be able to go to the White House. You're going to be able to go to the Capitol, where Congress is, the Pentagon. So they're the head of defense. The State Department, which is the head of diplomacy. And diplomacy is just our interactions with other countries. Okay. So keep that in mind because we're going to talk more about it here in a second. And then there's a military base that you can visit as well. Okay. But make sure you're going to the Oval Office, going to the White House fairly often because you need to check your mail. Okay. And that's the next little part right here. So you need to make sure that you're checking your mailbox and that you're acting upon the things that you get in your mailbox. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Okay, so these are the things that you could possibly get in your mailbox. The first thing is you could get a bill from Congress, and you have to read through the bill and decide if it meets your agenda, right? If it meets the things that you want done in terms of your presidency. And if you like it, you can sign it and it becomes law. If you don't like it, you can veto it and send it back to Congress. Now, if you veto something, Congress can send you that bill again, revised. And then that way you can decide whether you want to sign it into law or not after they've changed it. Okay. Once a bill becomes a law, you have to figure out what department is going to actually carry that law out. Okay. So you have to read the content of the law, and then you have to figure out which department matches the content of that law. You might also be asked to handle diplomatic tasks because that's your job as president. You were the chief diplomat. So you could be given a task that you feel like you need to handle in person, and then you can fly and handle it in person. Or you might be given a task that could be dealt with by someone who works for you. Okay, so maybe something that you don't necessarily need to get personally involved in. And that's where you would decide to send the Secretary of State, because remember that State Department, you're going to send the Secretary of State instead of yourself if you think that you can't deal with it or you don't need to deal with it. Okay. And then down here, you are going to be given tasks to do in terms of military, and you have to remember to stick with your agenda. If you pick an agenda that is not like an anti-war agenda, but you are constantly starting battles, you might not do as well in office as you would have otherwise. Okay. So right here, you just need to make choices. If you're going to deploy troops, if you're going to win a war, those different kinds of choices that come with being the commander-in-chief. Okay. All right. And then the end, how to win. So you're going to have this information panel up all the time that's going to kind of give you how you're doing. So you have to remember, you have to keep your public approval rating up because the public is who elects you. So you have to make sure that you're doing what the public wants you to do in terms of enforcing laws. Also, your agenda progress, so that's right here. Your agenda progress, you want to make sure that you are adhering to what you said you were going to do, okay? And it'll tell you how far you progressed in that. Also, the peace and war light, so you have to look at, are you fighting a war right now? Are you not fighting a war right now? Because that's important in terms of your decision making. And then also, have you checked your mailbox lately? Is it piling up? Are you keeping it clear? All of those things. Okay. So you just need to make sure you're promoting your agenda, you're enforcing the laws that have been passed, that you're trying to end wars, and that you are upholding your diplomacy or your relations with other countries. Okay. As you're playing this game, I want you to think about these questions. What does a president need to do after he signs a bill into law? Because it's not just done when that happens. He has other tasks that he has to complete. Is it hard to be the president? Why? How does the president get his or her ideas made into law? Because the president can't introduce law, but he can get his ideas made into law. And then who helps the president? And then what do they do to help him? Okay. All right. So this is your step 3. You're going to click right here. Okay. And then your game should pop up and it should look like this. And then you're going to click right here and click play. Okay. And then you're going to play through the game. Should take you a couple minutes to do it, so that you can go ahead and pause the video right now and then play the game, and then meet me back here when you're done, okay? All right, so you've played the game, and hopefully you can see how many different hats the president has to wear and how much he has to juggle. The very last step that we're gonna do, on your same piece of notebook paper, you are gonna answer the following question. I want you to think about task 2, about Congress. And then I want you to think about this task. And I want you to tell me how the president and Congress overlap. What are the jobs that they need each other to get done? Okay, I want you to tell me at least 3. If you can think of more, that is great. And you can write those down too, okay? So here's how I've set up my notes. You can see I made a little mistake down there at the bottom. That's okay. We all make mistakes. So right here, this is where I would answer that question. Okay, I would maybe number it 1 through 3 answer, or I can answer or in paragraph form, whatever you want to do. Okay, so I'm going to pull the question back up here. I'm going to let you pause it, answer your question, and then we'll do a little debrief. Okay. All right, welcome back. I hope your paragraph went really well, or your list went really well. And we'll kind of talk about some of those things here in just a second. So, lesson debrief. Here are the things that you should know after doing this lesson. The first bullet point on here, we didn't really cover, but I'm going to tell you anyway because it's important. In order to be president, you have to be 35 years old, you have to be a natural-born U.S. citizen, and a 14-year resident. Natural-born citizen just means being a citizen upon his birth, okay? And then a 14-year resident just means that he can't live overseas for too long because we need a residency requirement inside the United States, okay, of 14 years. Okay, things we did learn. He serves a 4-year term and has a 2-term limit. He has a lot of constitutional jobs. So commander-in-chief, he controls the military. So hopefully in your paragraph, maybe you came up with that. He is the commander-in-chief, but Congress gets to declare war. He also enforces the law that Congress passes or Congress creates. He also needs to uphold the Constitution as a job that he has. So it's his job to follow the Constitution. He can also pardon people who are accused of federal crimes. He also gets to appoint ambassadors and federal judges and his cabinet members. And this could have also gone in your paragraph because the Senate has to confirm these appointments. Okay, they actually have to give them their jobs. And then he can also sign or veto bills that Congress creates. So this could have also went in your paragraph. Congress needs the president to sign bills into law because overriding a veto is very difficult. So they need the president there to actually enact the legislation that they have passed. You could have also talked about treaties, that the president negotiates treaties and the Senate, signs them into law or into effect. Okay, so you could have talked about that as well. He also oversees a massive executive branch that enacts laws. So that's all those departments we talked about, Homeland Security, Education, Veterans Affairs, State, Treasury, Defense, all of those different departments. That is their job to actually fulfill the law that Congress creates and the president signs into law. Okay. All right. I've had such a good time teaching you guys today, and I hope that you have learned a lot about the president. And I hope you have a very wonderful summer. Bye.